So I'm curator of contemporary design here at Cooper-Hewitt, and I also run a graduate program in graphic design in Baltimore at Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA. And a couple of my students are here today who were conducting workshops. It was kind of fun just for all the people out there meeting you guys and working with you, and now suddenly we're sitting on a stage. I know. So it's a little bit different. Last year, my students and I published a book together called D.I.Y, Design It Yourself. And I'm going to talk briefly about that book and why we did it. And one of the reasons we did it is because of these women who publish a magazine called Readymade, which is part of an entire movement in people wanting to make their own stuff, a generational movement, a shift in the way people approach design. So we did our thing, our book, kind of inspired by this bigger event. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, and then have Grace and Shoshana talk about their book and their magazine, perhaps, and where it comes from. Again, this was done by a group of MFA students in graphic design, and we did it in 1 year. The students wrote the book, did all the photography, all the production, all the graphic design. It was an exercise in radical democracy. We had 18 authors with a strong editor who got to make decisions at the 11th hour. And I don't know if Veronica and Kim are in the room. They might be busy still making books and buttons, but I'll show you some of the things that they contributed to the book. And the idea of the book is to invite the everyday public into the field of graphic design. It's been a bit controversial in the world of graphic design. Some people said, well, what business do you have as professional designers running a professional design program in an art school making a book that says everyone can design? Okay. Well, we believe that by raising the knowledge of people about our field, it actually is good for our field, and that the more people know about what design is, the more they will respect our art form at its highest level. And the best way to get people to understand what you do is to have them do it themselves. And this is, you know, it's a way of life. And no one's going to stop it. And we feel that the more people know about typefaces and grids and paper and making things and making their own image, the more understanding they have of design. Not just design as shopping, which is one way that design has become democratized in the last decade, as we have much better stuff to buy. But this other movement is not about buying, it's about making, and it's about the access that people have to tools. My kids, who have been here most of the day, they use industry standard software. You know, they work in Photoshop, Flash, InDesign, PowerPoint. You know, they use the same tools that professional designers do, and they're in 2nd grade and 5th grade. Okay, and so the idea that everybody in the world now, and especially the rising generation, has access to the same stuff that so-called professionals have. And what we as a profession can do is raise the level of discourse about those tools. Give people ideas about how to use them better. So I'll talk briefly about the book. This is from a chapter on business cards, which really demonstrates the philosophy of showing people how to make things in a very simple way, but then how to build it up and make it more complex, and how to educate our readers about the language of design. So if you think about business cards, everybody needs one. If I collected business cards today, probably half of the cards in the room would have been made by people who are sitting here. They would be your personal business card. The museum issues me a business card that I have never once given to anyone, because it doesn't explain who I am. I have 2 jobs, not 1, so it's not useful for me to have something that says Cooper-Hewitt. I need my own business card that really connects to my websites, my blog, my teaching, my curating work. You know, I got too many things to do, and one little piece of paper can say it, but I have to make it myself. Okay, so in our business card chapter, we look at you know, typography, at the simplest things that you can do with type on a piece of paper that big, right, which is a portrait of you. It is a picture of you in words on a little piece of paper, and you use them for business, but you also use them for social reasons. You use them to drive people to a website or to sell a product. You know, it's not just business anymore. All these designs are done in Helvetica and Garamond. They could all be done in Microsoft Word, and in fact, on our website, designityourself.org, we have a template for how to design a business card, a beautiful business card in Microsoft Word. Yes, it is possible. Much easier to use InDesign, but you can do it with Microsoft Word. And then in the chapter, we start with these very simple, very austere, kind of minimal designs that are really, you know, typography at its 0 degree. But then it builds up into these more complex things. Again, all done just with characters on your keyboard, nothing complicated. But we show how the language of design can build up from something very minimal into something much more constructed and much richer. And then we get into more of the ready-made side. What can you do with different materials, right? A business card does not have to be laser printed. It does not have to come from the corner offset shop or from Kinko's. Yes, you could bake a batch of brownies and put your phone number on it. And this is perhaps one of our toughest arguments that we had in the studio when we were working on the book as a team. There was one student who believed that we should not show a business card brownie in the book because it's just not realistic. But the point of the book is to show what's possible, okay? So,
and delicious.
So if you had a party and put your phone number on all the brownies, right? Would anybody put it in their back pocket? No. But would they forget it? Absolutely not. It would be a very memorable event. And you can also make business cards out of anything, right? Paint chips are an incredibly glamorous material, much to be exploited. This is from our chapter on stationery. It's by Veronica Semico, who was running the button machine factory today. You know, these are stationery designs all done potentially in Microsoft Word, okay? And what you can do with color and materials and cutting holes in the paper to create an image of yourself on paper is just astonishing. On the other side is all stuff you can do with labels, you know. I totally advocate if you're doing a DIY identity for your own business or your personal identity, use labels. It's way easier than printing on envelopes, right? And once you figure out the setup on your Avery label stuff, you never have to do it again, and you can stick them on business size, on, you know, packages, on big envelopes. So labels are like a great material, and of course there's CD, it's endless. The possibilities go on. Of course, there's a chapter on T-shirts, and in this chapter, we look at, you know, what you do if you want to make 500 T-shirts. Typically, you're going to work with a T-shirt company, but people don't know how to do that. You know, it's like designers know how to do that, but you know, what kind of artwork do you need? How do you get T-shirts manufactured? But also, what do you want to do if you're just making one? And so we go from that range, and the whole book is about that, inviting people in from design as mass production, design as publishing, creating multiple copies of things, to design as creating a single thing that is just for you or for one person. So this is a customized sweatshirt that's made for one person's body, and it's a single thing. This is by Kim Boast, who is running the bookmaking workshop today. And it's a T-shirt made by writing on the fabric in bleach. And of course, it's a one-of-a-kind piece. But it shows you what's possible with hand materials, familiar household materials, creating something that's absolutely unique and particular. And design encompasses that, from the individual to creating something that's promoting a product or a band or an event or a school or something. And this is from the bookmaking chapter, and I put this slide up here to show you that if anybody who made books in the bookmaking room, this technique of stitching a book, which can also be done just with staples, and we talk about that in our book. We've got a big stapler in there. Everybody wanted to sew today because that's like the spirit of craft and making. If I was doing it, I'd just be stapling them. But you can use that very same way of constructing a book to publish a book, right? To put text in it and print them in the correct way so that page 1 comes out in the right place. And it just takes a little planning, and we tell you how to do that. And then you can make, programs for a wedding or for a performance or a book of poetry, which is what Kim did on this page. I'm going to conclude just by talking briefly about why DIY. Why did we do this? We were inspired by what is a much bigger movement. Readymade magazine is something that I was really interested in and thought, wow, they should do more with graphics. I remember I was actually traveling one day, and I do most of my thinking work when I'm traveling because I can't check email. So I always have my own sketchbook, and I come up with ideas, and I'm like, wow, I wonder, would I have the guts to call up Shoshana and say, what if we did like a column, and every month there'd be like, we could do it, an article on business cards for Readymade. Would think they would like that? And I made this whole list of all the things that we could do, and I'm like, hey, wait, it'd be much easier just to do a book. It's like, they don't have to call Shoshana. Well, I know how to do the book. I've got that set, so that's what we ended up doing. And so Readymade is this fabulous magazine that, there's copies here today that is a philosophy of design. And it's I think when Readymade first started coming out, nobody really thought of it as a design magazine. It was a craft making kind of thing. And increasingly, it's really become a design magazine. But it's speaking to the new world of design, which is a world that includes everybody. So it's not a professional magazine like print or communication arts. But it's a design magazine. And it's not domino. It's not about shopping. It's about making. It's about engaging design on its own terms, engaging it as a designer. Readymade is going to be featured in the next triennial, a show we do here at Cooper-Hewitt every 3 years. And we're looking at this phenomenon of DIY across various entities and institutions, including Readymade. We're also including Make, which is kind of the boys' version of Readymade, where you make stuff with technology. And Make magazine, this is a spread from Make. I don't know why I need this, but I'm glad it could only cost me $14. That's excellent. Make also has a philosophy of design to it, which is that every product that you buy should be hackable, that everything should be put together with screws, not glue, so that people can take it apart and fix it or change its function. And that's the new philosophy. This is from an artist book called D.I.Y. By Joe Scanlon, and it shows you how to make your own funeral entirely out of IKEA bookshelf components. And of course it's done with beautiful visual instructions, no language. It communicates across global situations, and of course, don't forget the lid, very important. And it's everything you need. It's all available there. And very festive at the end. And everybody's laughing, but actually, there is a DIY funeral movement. And it seems like, it's just a joke, but in every part of human endeavor right now, there are DIY components. The way people buy stock, the way they get legal advice, the way they get medical information. It is no longer a case that you trust a professional to make decisions for you. People want to be part of it. The funeral industry, has been under attack for 30 years for monopolizing death. Right, which is obviously a growth industry and a captive market. So there's a whole movement out there of people that want to take over the corporate control of funerals and do it themselves, dealing creatively with death. Unfortunately, the designer of this book did not consult our book in terms of typography, so we need to help them deal creatively with color choices and fonts and so forth. The Church of Craft is a movement, you know, and again, I'm pointing to these things to show kind of the bigger picture of DIY. This is real. Church of Craft was created by two women who got ordained, legally ordained as ministers. So their organization is officially a church under the eyes of the US government. And they have chapters in various cities around the country and the world where people get together and talk to each other about the sanctity of making stuff. Okay, that's the religion. And they knit and they make things together, which is like what we did today. I don't call it religion, I just call it having a really good time. But in a way, design has become my religion because I really feel that design is a way of thinking and acting that is relevant to just about everything you do every day, from when you wake up and decide whether or not to make your bed. That's a design decision. To how you set your table, to what you cook and how you eat it, and so forth. Obviously, journalism has been transformed by the DIY blog movement. Etsy is kind of eBay for makers. It's a website where you can go and sell your crafts to an international audience. And my favorite thing now is Cafe Press, where you can upload designs for t-shirts, coasters, mugs, whatever, and order them yourself or let other people buy them. And on Cafe Press, you can actually publish a book. And I end my remarks with that, because the next thing you guys should all go out and do is publish a book. Because it's no longer only for a certain group of people or for a certain kind of publishing industry to control these things. And Cafe Press will give you instructions about typography and book design and how to set up your files so that they'll come out right. And they'll sell the book on the website and send it to whoever wants it. And it's a kind of new capitalism, new micro-marketing, and the new idea that everybody has a chance, that everybody who has something to say can say it. And my warning to the graphic designers who are worried about, you know, our profession disappearing because of the DIY movement, is think of something to say. Because there's a lot of people out there who want to get their message out. And I'm going to pass this over to you.
Hey. Okay, off to Readymade. So I feel like we're kind of working backwards through time here, since you picked up from the magazine and published a book about design and making it accessible. But Grace and I founded Readymade magazine in 2001, December of 2001. It was the two of us and 10 credit cards in a leaky warehouse in Berger,
which is the best
California.
Chapter of your book.
Yeah, we have actually a how-to in our book on how to start a business on credit cards, if you're interested in that.
Very dangerous.
It is. It's a perilous, perilous road, but it really, if you've got the chutzpah to back it up, it can work. So, do we want to talk a little bit about the founding of Readymade?
Yeah, let's tell them what inspired it.
Okay.
And a little bit about our background.
So, Readymade is a do-it-yourself magazine, and like Ellen said, it's kind of an odd design magazine because it's not pushing product at people like a magazine like Domino, where we're saying, you know, buy this, buy that. We do a little bit of that, but it's really more about creative reuse. And our philosophy is that this consumer culture is producing an enormous amount of stuff, just dross. And we live in a very disposable culture where pretty much you walk through your day and you're just creating trash all the time. And the philosophy of Readymade is to look around you and see the stuff around you and to kind of see new utility for it, rather than just kind of taking stuff and using it and blithely throwing it away. The idea is to see kind of the common mundane beauty in everyday things. And if something's not broken, reinvent it, give it new utility, turn it into something cool for your home or for your person. So that's really what Readymade does. And the original trick came from the art world. Marcel Duchamp, who coined the term Readymade, He's looking through a Readymade here, and the caption for this picture is, "Anything can be beautiful." And the idea really is that Duchamp took everyday objects, kind of artifacts of industry, and put them in a gallery setting and called them art. And his most famous Readymade, of course, is the urinal that he turned upside down and signed R. Mutt and declared art. This was done in 1917. He actually submitted it to a show in New York. He was the chair of the board of this art organization, and it was rejected immediately as scandalous. You know, the art world was completely scandalized by this piece of art. But it turned out to be one of the most inspirational pieces of art ever made. In fact, there was a recent study done in England where they asked contemporary artists what the most influential piece of art was throughout history. And I mean, we're talking about from, you know, the David in Florence through, you know, Guernica and Picasso, and Duchamp's urinal was the #1 choice of the most influential piece of art ever.
Ellen mentioned that there's this new movement in design, and so when Readymade came about, it was sort of coincidental and fortuitous that we launched when we did. When we launched in December 2001, obviously it had been cooking much longer to our launch date, but it was before the rise in nesting, it was before the internet bust, it was before trading spaces had become a pop culture phenomenon. And so it's interesting that, you know, 5 years later, there's this big DIY movement, this big makeover craze. And we, you know, kind of contemplate, we're like, God, what is causing this to happen? Shauna mentioned one of the key ingredients, or one of the key, I like to distill it down to 3 points. The one that Shauna mentioned was how we live in a disposable culture. And so what we try to do is inspire people to become more conscientious consumers. So yeah, please, you know, still people buy things, but, you know, think about where things are made or how things are made, because then you'll be more aware of where it goes when you put it away. So maybe I'll make this into a clock instead of putting it in the recycling bin, knowing how much energy it takes to create this can and then to remake it into something else if I were to put it in a recycling bin. So that's one of sort of, I guess, one of the key inspirations of Readymade. The other one is customization. We live in a disposable culture. We also live in a mass-produced culture. I could go to IKEA and get a certain look. I could buy a certain look at Pottery Barn or Crate and Barrel, and like, where's my imprint? Where's my expression of who I am? And so the whole idea of customizing something that you buy, or mixing and matching styles, and leaving my personal imprint on my environment and the things that I own. And this is largely inspired by the fact that we are super empowered to get information these days. You know, as Ellen said, it's like, if I buy a car, it's like, I'm not going to rely on the salesman. I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to look at, you know, all the comparisons. I'm going to read the magazines. And since I know so much and everything is at the tip of my fingertips, it's like, what's going to differentiate what I buy then from what you buy, and what I know from what you know? And so the idea of customizing our lives and the things that we do purchase is part of what Readymade is about. And the third thing is using our hands, because we are a very kind of screen-oriented, computerized society now. It's like, my dad changes oil to our car, I mean, since I was a kid, for as long as I remember. He probably still does, actually. But what do? We go to Jiffy Lube, we pay $30, and in 15 minutes, our oil is changed. You know, if I had to change, I don't know if I could figure it out, you know? Think of like darning a hole in a sweater. It's like, these things used to be passed on from generation to generation, and now it's like, we don't know how to do these things because everything is so convenient. Everything is so computerized. So the third element of Readymade is about using your hands. So yes, we do publish a magazine, and we do feel guilty about the trees, even though we do use post-consumer waste paper. But the whole idea of tangibility, it was like, well, why you make Readymade an online magazine? We're like, but we like to touch it. You know, and the whole idea of making something, you know, is you need that sort of tangibility factor. So Marcel Duchamp, our patron saint, you know, he took something as common as a bicycle wheel, he put it on a pedestal, he called it art. You know, and then so the people who followed him took something from popular culture, you know, enlarged it, exaggerated, you know, made it a joke and called it art. Readymade, we take something very ordinary and just make it useful and find a different use for it. So a wheelbarrow to move, you know, dirt or bricks. Hey, it's also a chair. So that's what Readymade is really about.
So for every great movement, there must be a manifesto, and Readymade wrote its own manifesto, which it takes a little bit of hubris to write a manifesto. I felt a little guilty about writing a manifesto, even for Readymade. But it was really fun to do. So we made our readers swear to these tenets that they will in some way redefine space, material, functionality, or context. I understand that the phrase home decor is verboten. The idea is that we wanted to create a manifesto that was about acknowledging the open source nature of design. And the beauty of what Ellen said today, that she was inspired by Readymade and she thought maybe I'll submit some projects, and then she was like, hey, why don't I just make a book myself? And the reason why we salute her and why we're so excited by that rather than being threatened by it is because that is the whole philosophy behind Readymade design. It's that designers are constantly cross-pollinating, they're constantly ripping ideas off of each other, and that's part of the fun. The fun is that we're all kind of doing this together and learning from each other, and that we wanted people to see design as a collaborative engagement rather than something that has this kind of like ownership attached to it, that has this sense of auteurship, like I made this, it's proprietary, and we tend to think that way because we live in a society where intellectual property is patented, where ideas are considered to be owned, they're considered to be material, and we want to kind of break free of that. And I think the way that technology is going, that's really happening in terms of open source software and blogging and stuff like that. So that's really exciting to us.
And the whole idea of design not being so precious, and I think a good example of that is Martha Stewart, queen bee of craft. I mean, she made domesticity an industry, for God's sake. And hats off to her, because without her, I don't think Readymade would exist. But we say, well, Martha is aspirational. Readymade is inspirational, and Martha is about the end product, like, oh, the perfect doily. And Readymade is about the process, because everything, all the projects, it's just a pit stop in the creative process. This isn't the end goal. You'll take the chopstick clock, you'll go home, and you'll take the clock mechanism and you'll put it on something that you love in your house that you want to make into a clock. Or you'll take the tote bag that you drew on and maybe you'll sew some, something on it. And, you'll take it another step further. So
it happened today. People found better ways of making our FedEx CD rack.
Yeah. So that's definitely
open source. Right.
Okay, so we decided we were going to make a book, because what happens when you start a business is you end up managing a business and not doing the stuff that you love. You end up not making stuff. You end up not doing the stuff that you started the magazine for in the first place. So Grace and I said, all right, this is our chance to get back to the cutting board and to make a book of projects that we come up with, and to write a book that I'm going to write and not just edit other people's words. So in each chapter, we broke it down by raw materials. So we have paper, plastic, wood, metal, and glass, thank you. And we broke each chapter down into several sections. And we started with a history of the material, because we feel like people don't really know where stuff comes from. People don't really know when the first paper was made. Paper was made in China thousands and thousands of years ago. And people don't understand the chronology of materials. So we start with a history of the material. We then do a chemical breakdown of the material. So we kind of got back into the science lab and figured out exactly how plastic is made, exactly how paper is made. I mean, pretty much everything starts with trees, is what we learned. Plastic, paper, glass starts with sand, but they're all organic elements. Then we did an essay in every chapter that was kind of a how-to based on the material. This was a little bit of a leap. The plastic chapter, how to start a business on plastic. We did
also the plastic surgery. How to avoid
plastic surgery.
Face exercises.
Yeah, we kind of took a little bit of license here, but the idea was make it funny. I mean, Readymade, you know, it's a funny idea, and we don't want to be too serious and too starched about this. So every chapter has an essay based on the material, a how-to.
And then, so there's the projects. And the projects, it's interesting. Somebody at the clock table was like, God, was it hard coming up with all the projects? And I was like, actually, yes, because imagine if we had a book full of clocks or a book full of FedEx CD racks. So, you know, to create a user experience, so this is where like design comes in. Design can apply in many ways, is to design the user experience where there was a nice diversity of project sizes, a nice diversity of raw material sizes for wood, something as large as a wooden pallet to something as small as a clothespin. Also think of the range of skill sets. You know, we had to have projects that were really easy and also things that were more difficult, for people who were more skilled and wanted things that were more challenging. And so that layer those kind of, needs on the project. And then there was, so for a project to qualify in the book, has to kind of encompass 2 or 3 or an assortment of, it had to look good, it had to have sort of a functionality at the end, it had to incorporate or use an everyday item or common everyday item as a raw ingredient, and it had to, and then all the other ones that range of difficulty and da-da-da-da-da. And so what we did to sort of re-emphasize the fact that, this isn't, it is interestingly a DIY movement, but we're not here like, this is the end all be all. We actually included our failed projects. It's called Remake This. So there were projects that just didn't turn out quite the way we wanted to. One of the more popular ones in the press, and we don't know why, I don't know why they always pick this, is the plastic water bottle lounge chair. So we basically take 1.5 liter plastic empty water bottle. I mean, they're great.
Do you have in here?
I think it's
further in.
It may be, actually, I don't think we included it. But if you buy a book, which you should, both books are for sale, you can take a peek. And it's comfortable, but dang, when you sit in that thing, it is so loud. I just don't think anybody would really want it in their house. So that's just a small example of, hey, we don't take ourselves too seriously.
It was a very amusing day when Grace brought like a bunch of strung together water bottles into the office. She's like, it's beautiful, isn't it? And I sat down in it, and there was this huge thunder through the office.
It was really funny. So, so we challenge our readers, make it better. Figure out a way to make that thing not so noisy. So anyways, we're going to kind of run through the chapters real quickly and kind of just show you some of the inspirations and to show, you too could reinvent an everyday object. So this is paper.
So we have a MacGyver challenge in the back of every magazine where we give people an obsolete material or something that they use up and throw away. For example, a phone book, and say make something cool out of it, make something new out of it. This person used it as a seed sprouter. So he bored holes into it, put little seeds in it, and it's kind of like a mulching seed sprouter. Again, another MacGyver project, this one with McDonald's cups made into a lamp.
Hey, you can make a clock into everything. You can make anything into a lamp. Second secret of Readymade. Right. So we took a FedEx tube, which was one of the projects out here, and it's a CD rack.
The other little trick that we love, and when you think back on the Brillo boxes, Warhol's Brillo boxes, is the idea of taking brands that are just constantly in our visual sphere and kind of commenting on that, bringing them into your home in a different way. So there's always a slightly little nudge, nudge, wink, wink thing when we're using materials from culture.
Poster tubes. We could probably create a book entirely of poster tube projects because that's a really fun material to work with. We made a magazine tree out of it. So you could store your magazines, but it's a house plant you never have to water. Yeah. That's how we called it. Phone books. We were inspired by Samuel Mockbee. Mm-hmm. He is an architect that used a lot of reuse, kind of recycled materials in his buildings. And so we used a phone book, and this is a remake project. Not because it doesn't work. It is a phone book Ottoman, and the intent was to show off the beautiful pattern on the side of the phone book. But obviously, I tried too hard to show off the side that the phone book, as a focus, as a main ingredient, sort of lost its kind of center stage, and so it became a remake project. But it's actually a donut of phone book bricks. So I was like, oh, Maccabee used, carpet tiles as brick. Let's make phone book bricks. But my goodness, had interns gluing the sides. We take it to Kinko's, chop, glue again. And that thing is actually held together by the compression of these like literally 18-inch bolts that, so in the middle of that Ottoman is completely hollow inside. But the wood is actually beautiful, so it actually weighs a ton too, but anyways. So something as simple as a shopping bag. I mean, we get those all the time, and some of them are beautiful. They're lacquered, they're glossy, they're graphic, there's beautiful graphics on them. Wove it into a shopping bag rug. Actually, there's a coat of polyurethane on top, so it's very durable. But it's something, it reminds me of quilting actually, this weave. And this project was inspired by this leather giant floor rug with, it was a woven floor rug, and I guess the pieces that were woven were this wide. So we decided to use shopping bags and make that. And I don't know, I think it's very artful. Something as simple as a shoebox. You get your shoes, you can make it, combine it with a room divider, and you have a shoebox shoji screen caddy. So imagine like those old-fashioned traveling wardrobes. This is something you can splay open and show off your sneaker collection, or you can close it. It can roll around. You can actually
Helps if you have all the same shoebox.
Yeah.
yeah, Converse and Nike, but it's the same on both sides. So it's viewable from all around. Pringles can. This is a
Don't eat Pringles.
yeah.
They're too addictive. I know. They're terribly addictive.
There is a mug caddy, so think of it as a mug mosaic for your wall. But you know how you like put your mugs in the cupboard, it just piles up. It's a big mess. So, anyways, and then off to plastic.
So we're just gonna breeze. Yeah, that was a major haul. I bet you made some good money off of that. We're just going to breeze through the rest of the chapters because there's a bunch of them, and we've made stuff out of each of them. But Americans use enough plastic utensils in a day to basically feed the world a picnic. We use an enormous amount of plastic. So we made a bunch of different stuff in here from plastic. We made a plastic chandelier.
Oh,
we got that in here. This is a plastic.
Project.
This is a magazine project. It's a juice carton made into a lamp. Plastic Tyvek envelope, the kind of mailer you get, turned into a messenger bag.
That's a kit that we sell. So you actually make a bag out of the Tyvek that we send you the supplies in. You just add duct tape.
And that's duct tape as the handle.
So we took the casings of CDs and made a modular frame project. You could have this crawling up your wall. We took something as simple as plastic utensils.
So here's the plastic utensil.
That's like a grand chandelier. And that's Shauna and her new husband in the plastic utensil chandelier. They weren't married at the time. I'm like, you better marry this guy. This is going to be in her book. So, God, this was a really fun project. New York Times plastic bags ironed into a messenger bag. This is a no-sew messenger bag. No sewing machine skills required.
So that's actually, the plastic is fused together with an iron, and you just put wax paper in between so you don't ruin your iron.
Wood.
Enormous amount of wood. Probably, I think the statistic is something like 70% of the wood that we use is turned into shipping pallets. It's an enormous, it's just a mind-boggling percentage. And shipping pallets are everywhere. They're usually kicked to the curbside and just left, especially if they're slightly worn. This guy made a staircase out of shipping pallets. These people used old shipping crates to make a sideboard. This was a project, another wood project in the magazine made out of burnt out speakers. So these people made a sideboard out of burnt out speakers.
Isn't that a beautiful piece of furniture? So we took clothespins in the book, and we were inspired by Plastica's flip-flop mat, and we made our own little doormat. A definite feat of patience. We took a shipping pallet. We were inspired by Droog's. They had a project back in 2001 that sort of explored neighbors and space, and they had one of these fencing with a little cutout where they just put a bike in. So we were like, hey, we could use those slats and make a bike rack also, just widening out the pallet slats. a simple dresser drawer, inspired again by Droog's chest of drawers, and an Eames storage kind of bookcase, and we made our little, that's actually 3 stacked dresser drawers with aluminum L brackets. My dad helped me make that. That adjusting. Chopsticks, inspired by the Nelson spindle clock. A lot of you guys made that project. Our chopstick clock. So that was a lot of fun. Metal.
Slag heap of metal. So this was actually sent to us by, I think, the ISDA chapter head in Philadelphia, and it's just a bunch of discarded faucet handles that he put together, screwed together from underneath, bolted together, and put like an industrial spring in the top as a candle holder. Altoids tins are the greatest raw material on earth and totally unrecyclable. So we actually do a lot of Altoids Challenges. And this guy made speakers, desktop speakers out of them. So he took apart speakers that you would use for your Walkman and used the actual earphone parts and glued them into the back of the Altoids and ran a wire out of the back. And those are just playing cards in the front. This is the chassis from a computer. So if you see, there are 2 metal parts, and this guy just unscrewed his old PC and spray painted the pieces and turned it into an end table.
So we took your dry cleaning wire hangers. We were inspired by this project. It's from a German designer. And we're like, hey, what else can we make out of wire hangers? And we came up with a wire hanger wine bottle rack. Something as utilitarian as a ladder. Saw this bookcase, we're like, hey, there's a ladder in there. And we made our own ladder bookcase. And can I tell you, this thing holds so much stuff. I mean, if you have this bookcase, I don't think you need any other bookcases in your house. A soda can. Okay, so obviously, you know, the whole idea is like, okay, what can we make out of soda cans? Because I mean, everybody drinks soda. We throw them away by the bucketfuls a day. And this is a felted wool screen, like a room screen. And okay, we try to make it elegant, and you know, they're beer bottles, but you know, see the little pattern in it? So we made a beer can room divider, is what that is.
We've seen in dorm rooms everywhere next fall.
Glass. Glass was really hard. Glass is extremely hard because, you know, you can cut it, but that's about, I mean, you'd have to be a craftsman to melt it. So it was a very difficult raw material to work with, I have to say.
Keep going.
Okay. These are magazines.
Yeah, so this is glass. Again, it's a challenging thing to work with, but the beauty of it is that you know, oftentimes we have chipped stuff. Glass is very fragile, so we suggest anything that gets chipped to reuse, and this project came from a contributor who made it into a chandelier with chipped wine glasses.
So we took a simple glass bottle, the expensive Norwegian kind, and we looked at these, you know, really expensive, beautiful pendant lamps, and we cut the bottoms out, and we inserted a $3 IKEA light socket and made these beautiful pendant lamps.
Turns out there's a glass cutter that you can buy for about $50 where you just kind of heat up and score the glass and then slice through it with a wire.
It's actually fun to do. The idea of a fire screen, the shape of a car windshield was inspiring, and so we made, this is actually a remake project also, only because the integrity of the glass, once it's compromised, so we're like, oh cool, vintage BMW, front windshield, had a little nick. Once you light your fire, that little nick turns into a little spider web of cracks, which could be an aesthetic kind of alteration of this project, but, and it's safety glass, so it's not gonna, you know, put shards of glass on your floor, but it wasn't perfect, so we put it as a remake project. Martini glass, inspired by those bubbly, what do you call those, waterfalls? Towers. Led to the bird buffet, which is really funny and cute and really easy to make. Just, there's glass glue. You just put it together.
Those aren't real birds, no animals were harmed during the shooting of this.
So this is fabric. Sweater, Falkland pendant lamp. A sweater cozy is what we called it.
Lamp cozy.
Lamp cozy. Lamp cozy, not a sweater cozy, lamp cozy. That actually looks beautiful when it's on in a dark room.
So those are all just vintage sweaters that we cut up and sewed together over this lamp frame.
Denim, dog bed. The legs of the pant legs, very durable. My dog chews through dog beds like no tomorrow. A tablecloth, Wander's Knotted Chair, a lace fruit bowl that was molded in resin.
So these are all projects in our book, and you know they vary in level of difficulty. We have a little kind of scorecard of difficulty. It's our evolution chart of skill level. Begins with monkey and ends with craftsperson. There's a couple of levels of, you know, if you're on 2 feet or have opposable thumbs in between. But yeah, we encourage you to get out there and try 1 or 2 of these and send them in to us. Send in your projects. We're constantly looking for people like you to add to the ingenuity pool of Readymade. So thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So we have time for a few questions, which will be lovely to hear from you. And
what's your background? How did you, what did you need to do before?
Very different. Mine was in journalism, so I was a writer and editor for a long time, for about 10 years before I started, and just was writing a lot about design and pop culture and youth culture and really interested in it. And I was a tinkerer, I was doing a lot of bookmaking actually, and a lot of just tinkering with small stuff.
My background is in art as a printmaker, but then also in business. And so I was an entertainment media consultant. So the whole right brain, left brain, one side isn't satisfying enough. So I use both. So that's what I do. That's my background.
Do you know about the Make Workshop down on Christie Street?
No.
It's really a lot of fun. I've taken a couple of classes there in quilting. Even though I'm a quilter myself, they have some very interesting, different quilting techniques. Just lots and lots of different crochet products, making a skirt out of a denim. They're on the website.
so it's called Make Workshop.
MakeWorkshop.com.
That's good to know about.
Christie and Houston.
Okay.
I'd say 50% of our contributors come from New York. We have a huge readership.
Have you done anything on floor cloths?
On what?
Floor cloths?
No.
Floor cloths, no.
Like painted.
Like canvas
The
rugs.
history is that the colonialists who were poor, when they came over, could only have tamped earth, and then when the sailing ships came over, they put torn sails, and then somebody got the idea of painting them, and now people like me
Yeah, that's like
Nice.
for a living.
that's a
Wow,
good
that's
project. You should
beautiful.
submit a
It is a
project.
great project.
Yeah,
You
should.
You can use house paint.
so easy.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Well, that rug was sort of inspired by that too, like the paper woven rug. The idea of taking canvas and putting polyurethane. Well, just take paper, take anything and coat it with polyurethane, and you can step on it. Yeah. No, please, that'd be great.
Yes.
A lot of the projects I'm seeing remind me of things that you see in the developing world, in Asia and Africa, and Latin America, where it's DIY is sort of a necessity.
Yeah.
I wonder if you guys team up with any organizations and take some of the ideas that you have and take them out to places in Africa and sort of teach people who haven't seen a certain idea and show them how to build furniture out of scraps that they find somewhere. Things like that.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. In a way, it goes exactly in the reverse fashion, where we look to indigenous cultures who, as you say, are inventive by necessity because they have this stuff. You know, it's like there are books on this, and they're fascinating, about people who take just the detritus around them of, you know, tires and glass bottles and stuff, and make architecture out of them, or make floating vessels out of them. And you know, birds, if they're in a tree with a bunch of plastic bags that have flown up into the tree, will make a nest out of the bags. So it's exactly that idea. And I mean, I would love to think that we would have something to contribute to people in those cultures, but
Way of sharing these ideas.
Yeah.
it is absolutely. And you know, I am actually really inspired by some of the emergency shelter designs that are coming out in terms of helping cultures that are in crisis erect temporary shelters and stuff like that, and possibly using, instead of virgin materials, using the stuff that's around them to erect emergency.
Reuse container.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the one I was thinking of specifically. Using shipping containers as temporary shelters. So yeah, it's a great idea, and if Grace and I could clone each other 5 times,
Yeah, we'd have a huge educational
we would
program,
have
you
a whole
know?
university
Yeah.
of ready-mades.
There's a book by Tom Dixon that we're also inspired by called Rethink, and there's a bunch of photos that's, you know, that are exactly what you speak to, of these, you know, third world countries that are very resourceful with their trash and make them utilitarian in their everyday lives. So.
Anybody else? Yeah?
Is there a list of suggested readings of your book, like more sort of like the book you just mentioned or other?
There isn't. That's a good idea. Why didn't we think of suggested
We'll post something
reading
on our
lists?
site, maybe. That's a good idea.
Yeah. There's a very small library of this stuff. It's kind of startlingly small, but we're hoping to add to it.
Crafter.org has some links to books and to.
Okay, that's a good resource then.
You go to Amazon and type in Ellen's book or our book, and I'm sure they'll give you $5 that other people bought that you can buy.
Can you talk a little bit about how you found each other and what keeps you guys working well together and inspiring each other or finding inspiration or along those lines?
Sean and I actually met originally at a now defunct magazine called Inside.com. It was at the heyday of the internet, and she was writing for them, and they were one of my consulting clients. And you know, we love each other like sisters. So,
Which means we fight like sisters.
so by the end of the book, we weren't speaking. We're like, I'm so sick of you, I can't, you know. And then you get over it, and then you move on, you know. And I think because our skill set is so different, it's, you know, it's kind of like the two of us make a great unit. And so it's always actually been really, it's worked out really well.
Yeah. But I
Everyone's
think
amazed
that's
that-
really the key, is that we trust each other to really specialize and to know our own corners of the business. So I'm really handling all of the editorial and, you know, production side, creative side of the magazine. Grace is like driving it and making the business run and finding all of these creative ways to extend the business. She does all of our product stuff.
So she's the editor-in-chief, and I'm the publisher and CEO.
But you know, it comes to blows sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's hard to run an independent business and to build it from the ground up. So
We have our war scars. But it's been fun.
we always say that word. It was funny because Grace gave a toast at my wedding 2 weeks ago, and she said, "Shauna's already married. She's married to me."
I did. We've been married for 5 years. I mean, yeah, I did.